Okay, so it's Parshas Noach, but what I wanted to do is, just because we never get to give a share on Parshas Bereshis, so I thought I just happened to see something from the Ben Ish Chai, the great Sephardi sage, just a little very interesting thing he says on Parshas Bereshis, and I thought I'd share it with you, just to give a bit of a taste of Shabbos Bereshis. So if you look on page 14, in the beginning of the story with the forbidden fruit, right? So it's chapter 3 there, Pasuk Aleph, verse 1. And the Pasuk says, V'hanochosh hoyo orum Michoel chayas hasada. And the snake, the serpent, was cunning or clever from all the beasts of the field, right? Asher osa Hashem Elakim, that Hashem had made. Vayomer le'isha, he said to the woman, Afki Amar Elakim, is it true that Hashem said, that you shouldn't eat from all the fruit of the tree? Is that true? And she said, no, we can eat from the fruit, but we can't eat or even touch the fruit of the knowledge, and so on and so forth. Anyway, then he got her to do the sin, right? So he says a very interesting thing. He says, what does it mean that the serpent was the most cunning of all the chayas, all the animals of the field? He says a fascinating insight. It's a Kabbalistic idea, but it's a very, very fascinating insight. He says like this. He says that even with all the cunningness of the snake wouldn't have been able to convince Chava and Adam to eat from the forbidden fruit. But he knew something that allowed him to do that. What was his kindness? He knew that Adam had actually made a mistake. Now we know this because Adam had made a mistake. And the mistake was like this. Hashem told Adam not to eat from the forbidden fruit, right? Adam told Chava not to eat from the forbidden fruit. He said Hashem had said not to eat from the fruit. But he added, and he said, Hashem said not to touch the tree, right? Famous idea. Now, that's what we call in Hebrew a goder, a fence. So he made a fence. Now, there's nothing wrong with the fence. In fact, our Yiddishkeit is full of fences. In fact, it's one of the halachas of the Torah. One of the laws of the Torah, the biblical laws of the Torah, is that the legislators, the Sanhedrin, the Rabbanan, the rabbis of the Talmud and Sanhedrin and so on, are supposed to create fences. It's supposed to, mishmeres l'mishmarti, supposed to make a fence around my fence. In other words, Shabbos is full of fences. For example, I wouldn't say most, maybe it is most, but a lot of things on Shabbos that are forbidden are actually forbidden rabbinically as a fence. So you can't touch a pen because you might come to write it. You can't sell things on Shabbos, which actually does not even compromise one of the 39 prohibited activities, but you can't do it because people who sell things normally write, so therefore when you'll come to write, right? Yeah. Selling things on Shabbos is a rabbinic prohibition. Now, just to clarify something. When you say something's a rabbinic prohibition, by the way, it doesn't mean it's less important. The same Torah that says we have to listen to the biblical prohibitions says we have to listen to rabbinic prohibitions, right? However, they're still different. They're different categories, and it's important to know what things belong to. So, there's actually nothing wrong in Adam Harishon making a fence when he communicated to Chava the prohibition of eating the fruit. But what he should have said is that it's a fence. He didn't. He mixed it all into one, and that was a problem, right?
But if he said it was a fence, then she wouldn't take it seriously. Well, she didn't anyway.
No, but
I think the way he said it, isn't that more?
But it was not honest. It was not accurate. In other words, he should have said, look, Hashem said if we eat from the fruit, we're going to die, which is what he said. And I really think that's pretty, very bad, so let's stay away from it. Let's not eat it. Let's not even touch the tree, right? Which is logical, that's fine. He didn't say that. He said, Hashem said all in one, that you should not eat or touch the tree, which means if the day you do that, you will die. And so what did the serpent do? He got her into conversation. He says, is it true not to eat any of the fruit? She says, no, we can eat any of the fruit. We just can't eat the forbidden fruit of the tree and not even touch it. So he pushed her. And she touched the tree, and nothing happened. So he said, look, it's all nonsense, right? Okay. So that was his cunningness. Now, the Ben Ish Chai says a fascinating thing. He says that the way Hashem made the Aleph base, right? It says in Kabbalah, he says, that every letter of the Aleph base gets its life, its energy from the letter before. Okay? So Aleph infuses Beis infuses Gimel infuses Dalet, right?
Infuses Amen.
Sorry? Hashem? Right? He set it into motion. And that's why it says Hashem made the Aleph Beis in a numerical system where every letter is bigger than the previous one, because that's a lesson for every time we infuse someone else with something, we need to know that we're not bigger than the other person. On the contrary, the fact we're able to give it to the other person, it all comes from Hashem, and it's all Hashem allowed us to do it. We have to be humble. So the giver is actually numerically less than the receiver, which is interesting, right? So Aleph is less than Beis, Beis is less than Gimel, numerically, right? Okay. And that's why the Aleph Beis goes, actually there are different systems of Aleph Beis in Kabbalah. There's an Aleph Beis that goes backwards. But the main Aleph Beis is starting from Aleph to Tov, 1 to ascending numbers, and that's the way it works. Okay. So the word Goder, the word fence, okay, which was the whole secret of this, of the strategy of the Noach. Where does the word Goder, if you take the letters Gimel, Daled, Reish, where do they get their, where do those letters get their life force from? Right? Sorry? Sorry, not. Sorry, I asked the wrong question. The word Goder, the word fence, which letters does it give chayes to? Does it give life to? So you work it out. The Reish gives to the Shin, the Dalet gives to the Hey, and the Gimel gives to the Dalet, making the word Sodeh, field. Right? Oh, this is the secret that's in this pasuk. Let's have a look at the pasuk. The Hanochash. Look at the pasuk inside. Aleph, right? And the snake, says Ibn Ishchai. Hoya Oramu was very clever. He devised a very clever plan. How did he do this? Michoel, he took it from all chayas, the life force, hasodeh, of the field. The word sodeh. Where does the life force of the sodeh come from? From which word? The word goder, which means fence. The word goder is what gives chayas, life, to the word sodeh. So this is where he translates the pasuk. The snake was clever. Where did his cleverness come from? Not from his own. He wouldn't be able to do it. He took the plan from something. He took it from chayas hasodeh, the life force of the field. The life force of the word sodeh, shin daled hey, comes from the word gimel daled reish, which is goder, the fence. The whole thing was hinged on this concept of the fence, the chayas hasodeh. That's what he says in this passage. That gives us away how this cunningness, this cleverness of the snake. Okay.
Sorry, can you just again tell me what Adam should have said?
Adam should have said, Hashem said not to eat the fruit, and the day we eat the fruit we're going to die. Right? It's a capital offense. And what I'm suggesting, or what I'm instructing, or whatever the language would have been, is that we don't even touch the tree, because it's dangerous. Right? So let's just stay away from it. But he didn't do that. He made it all into one. You know, he should have made it clear, because what happened was that she thought that touching it is as severe as eating it. Therefore, the same punishment or consequence for eating it is the same consequence for touching it, which it wasn't true. That's why I need to, okay. That's a little bit from Bereshis. Okay, let's go to Noach. So this.
Parenting, sometimes when we do things with our children and we want to make them success, we do exactly that.
Correct. That's a good point.
Not just don't eat and don't touch, or whatever.
And we make it the same, and therefore when. And the consequence of that is that when the child sees that really the second thing is not that serious, then the real thing also becomes not serious. So you have to know what category everything belongs to. That's exactly right. Okay. The flip side, that's why I just clarified before, the flip side of that is, however, that often people, what they do is they mistreat the fences. Oh, it's just a fence, that's not important. That's also wrong. Because no, the same Torah that wants us to keep the halachas wants us to keep the fences. And it's mandated, it's obligatory. But we have to keep it as a fence.
So would it be, let's say if you have on Shabbos, you have a pen lying around, and you know a toddler is going to come and grab it and start drawing the wall. Am I allowed to grab that pen and throw it away?
No? Oh, there's a different way to get rid of it.
Get with my bag or something?
Yeah, so muktzah, there's a way to get rid of muktzah. You can do it kala achayam, you can do it with a shinui. So you can knock it off the table with your elbow and then kick it under the table. So it's still forbidden. Now, but there are, for examples, we do need to know what fits into one case. It's always like this. It's a good example you're asking. I'll just explain it. So when it comes to Shabbos, so our approach has to be whatever is forbidden on Shabbos, forbidden. Doesn't matter if it belongs to the category of biblical prohibition, rabbinic prohibition. It's all the same in terms of my observance of Shabbos. But for example, to give you an example where it's important to know what is what, there's a certain category of illness, not dangerous, not if somebody's dangerously ill, because then you can even do biblical stuff, right? But there's a certain category of, a certain level of illness where a person is ill, properly ill, like in bedridden or virus, whatever the case is, but not in danger, right? There the halacha is you're allowed to violate rabbinic prohibitions, you're not allowed to violate biblical prohibitions, right? So for example, if they needed medicine, I can go to the chemist and buy medicine. Because it's a rabbinic prohibition, without writing anything.
Even if it's not dying?
Yep. But I couldn't put on the light, because I couldn't put I couldn't light a fire. But I just have to be in uncomfortable, that's all. But right, so I'm just saying, you always have to ask a shia, you have to know exactly what, but there are things in that you're allowed to do on Shabbos in certain situations. You can do rabbinic things and not biblical things. Then it becomes important to know. Right. Also, in terms of when sometimes people are growing, right? So that's why it's also important to know what is what. Like, someone is battling to keep Shabbos and growing into Shabbos, right? So it's not a good idea to throw the whole book at them and say, well, this is all forbidden, right? Start with some key things, right? Normally you start key things, you start with the biblical things. And then move into that kind of thing. Okay. All right, page 30, Noach. So, Noach is a fascinating parsha, as we know, just to recap some of the stuff. We know the basic story. What's also fascinating about Noach is that in Parshas Bereshis last week, we covered the first 1,600 years of the world. 1,600, yeah, 1,600. By the time Noach comes along, one parsha later, the world has been in existence for 1,600 years already. Right? Not a lot of detail about the first 1,600 years and for the next so many years. Okay, so it's Noach. Noach comes along, he's 500 years old, whatever the case is, and he's told by Hashem that the world is coming to an end. There's corruption, there's thievery, there's adultery, and so on. Hashem has decided to destroy humanity, but he saves Noach. Just to touch on a few things in the Parsha, because I want to come back to the beginning of the Parsha, but just to touch on a few things. Interestingly enough, after the Mabul, there's a few interesting parts of the Parsha that don't often get good attention. One of them, which is an interesting thing, one of them is that at the end, he comes out of the Teva, and he starts a new life, and then a new world order begins, actually. One of the things that begins is the heter, the permission to eat meat. Why that's important is because what Hashem does, if you look after the story of the flood, he comes out of the Teva and Hashem gives him a new prohibition. Prohibition is you may not eat meat that was taken from a live animal, called Avram in Hachai. That was not given to Adam HaRishon because it was irrelevant. Adam HaRishon wasn't permitted to eat meat altogether. Right? So we have what we call today the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, the 7 Noach laws, right? The reason they're called 7 Noach laws is because we all consider descendants of Noach. And Jews have a special category, but the non-Jews are all called B'nai Noach, they're the sons of Noach, right? They come from Noach. But it's not because they were all given to Noach, because they weren't. Only the 7th one was. The first 6 of those Sheva Mitzvahs of Noach were given to Adam HaRishon, were given to the first man, right? Not to kill, not to steal, and so on. It's only the 7th one, which is Avram and Achai, not to eat meat from a living animal, that was given to Noach, that was added, because they were allowed to start eating meat, right? And it's then when the Torah reiterates and repeats the prohibition of not taking a human life. So you can take an animal life, because you can eat meat, but you cannot take a human life, right? And then it says, Shofech dam ha'adam, if a person spills the blood of man, that's a terrible thing. And it's also an interesting source that from there we learn not only the prohibition of murder, but the prohibition of self-injury. Interesting, right? So this week's Parsha, one of the sources. You know that there's a Isser, there's a prohibition. I mean, it's also part of normal living, but there's a prohibition not to injure oneself. The idea being that we are created, but Tselem Elokim, we are created in the image of God. Our body is holy, not only our soul. Our body actually doesn't belong to us, and therefore we need to protect it. It's everything of us is borrowed from Hashem, so to speak, to do a mission, and therefore we have to protect Hashem's objects, right? So if we're not permitted to self-injury, which leads into all kinds of interesting halachic issues. So we know that surgery is okay. It's a discussion. It's not just blanketly okay. It's a discussion. Surgery is part of self-injury. The reason it's okay is because it's for the purpose of health, and that's okay, right? The discussion, an interesting discussion that comes out of this week's Parsha, and this prohibition of self-injury is plastic surgery for cosmetic reasons only, right? Not health issues, or sometimes okay because of mental health issues, whatever. But if it's just for cosmetic issues, that's actually a problem. Not passing any issue. I'm just saying it's an interesting discussion that comes out of this, because it's part of self-injury. One is not permitted to put oneself in that kind of injury situation, which also explains something next week's Parsha, which I just mentioned. The famous question that Avraham Avinu kept the whole Torah even though it wasn't given, right? And the famous question is, if he kept the whole Torah even before it was given, why didn't he keep the mitzvah of circumcision? Only when he was 99, Hashem had to give him the mitzvah of circumcision, and then he had to circumcise himself. How come he hadn't done it before? If he kept the whole Torah, he ate matzah, he put on tefillin, did all these things, right? So why did he just keep the mitzvah of circumcision if he kept the entire Torah? And one of the many explanations I give, one of the explanations that are given is he wasn't permitted to do circumcision. Because the Avos, the forefathers, even though they kept the whole Torah, but they weren't actually technically Jewish. They kept the entire Torah, but they weren't halachically Jewish, so to speak, right? Therefore, their primary obligation was to keep the 7 Noach laws, right? One of them is, in this week's Parsha, not to murder, including not to self-injure, right? Therefore, Avraham Avinu was actually forbidden to do circumcision. Circumcision is self-injury, right? So he was forbidden to perform that mitzvah because it would violate one of the 7 Noachide laws, and therefore the prohibition of doing those laws overrode his willingness to do all the mitzvahs. Follow? Only when Hashem commanded him, then he was able to do it, obviously.
But Noach also kept.
Sorry?
Noach also learned Torah.
Noach learned Torah. It doesn't say Noach kept all the mitzvahs. He said he had knowledge of Torah, as he did his sons, and his sons started the yeshiva of Shem Ve'ever. It doesn't say that. I don't think it's explicitly said about Noach that he kept the mitzvahs. He learned Torah, yes. He had knowledge of Torah. Yeah. We know that from the fact that he took 7. Hashem told him to take 7 kosher animals rather than 2, and he obviously knew what they were. So.
But I heard a really interesting interpretation about that.
Yeah.
Talking about that, he didn't really know. It was actually Hashem giving him, with Hashem's ruach, Hashem guided the animals
Right.
to him.
Yeah, fair enough. But I mean, I think Rashi, if I'm not mistaken, or the Mepharshim say that the simple pshat is that he knew. He knew which ones were pure and which ones weren't. Yeah. Okay, that's just interesting. That comes out of the end of the parsha. Also, the rainbow is talked about in this week's parsha. The rainbow is an outcome of the flood. It's Hashem's sign that He won't destroy the world again. It's His covenant. That's why the rainbow is an interesting concept, because apparently when there's a rainbow, it's not such a good thing. It means like Hashem is in the mood to bring the flood, but He promised not to, so He won't. There's a thing, it's a bracha you make on a rainbow, right? So there's a thing when you see a rainbow, you don't tell someone else. You don't say, "Oh, look, there's a rainbow, let's make a bracha." You don't do that.
There is a bracha.
There is a bracha if you see it. Normally, if there's an opportunity to do a mitzvah, why wouldn't you share it with someone else, right? So is that, because not such a good sign, a rainbow.
Is it not a good sign for all humanity?
No, it just means that Hashem is unhappy.
He's not happy with us.
One of the things that says about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, right? The Gemara tells us that during the time of Shimon Bar Yochai, he was so great, and he elevated the world to such an unbelievable madrega that in his time there was no rainbow. During his lifetime. That was, but otherwise, so it's not. Yeah, I'm just saying, it's an interesting thing. I'm just mentioning it because it comes out of the 6th Parsha. It's interesting to know. Okay, so let's share a couple of insights on Parshas Noach. So first, I want to share with you one or two things on the first pasuk. The first pasuk has the famous expression. Let's have a look at the first pasuk, page 30, where it says, "Eile toldos Noach, Noach ish tzadik." These are the generations of Noach. Noach was a ish tzaddik, he was a righteous man. Tomim hoya b'darosav, he was perfect, simple, b'darosav, sincere, in his generations. Esel hakim is halach Noach, Noach walked with Hashem, he was one with Hashem. Okay. So Rashi points out already, of course, what does it mean? Why do we have the word Noach twice here, right? So Rashi points out that the pasuk begins with Eile toldos Noach. These are the generations of Noach. And then it doesn't say his generations. Generations normally mean children, right? And it comes the next pasuk. So Rashi says one thing is because whenever you mention a tzaddik, you praise the tzaddik before you say what you want to say. But also the pasuk is teaching us that the main children of a person like the permanent, eternal offspring of any individual is their good deeds. And that's what it says. Eila told us Noach. What are the children of Noach? Noach is tzaddik. The fact that Noach was a tzaddik, right? The Chassam Sofer says a very beautiful thing. He says, I might have mentioned this before once. He says a beautiful thing. He says that, why does it say the word Noach twice? Because we know that Noach lived very long, right? So Avram Avinu was born 10 generations later. You know that, right? There were 10 generations from Adam to Noach, 10 generations from Noach to Avram. However, before the flood, people lived very, very long, including Noach. So Avram Avinu was born, Noach was still alive, 10 generations earlier, right? How long did that overlap? 58 years, the gematria of Noach. Right? Says Chassam Sofer, this is what the pasuk means to say. Eila told us Noach. You want to know the real nachas of Noach? What was the real ultimate pleasure and generations, children of Noach? Noach, the 58 years of Avram Avinu that he had. That was the ultimate. That was when things started to go right. That was the beginning of Klal Yisrael. That was the beginning of the Matan Torah process and journey and so on and so forth. So that's the pasuk. Eila told us Noach. What are the generations of Noach? The real generation, the real ultimate children, offspring, Noach, the 58 years that he was able to see Avram Avinu.
Abraham still hadn't Lecha doesn't start till Abraham's about 75.
Right. That's a famous question. Did Avram Avinu meet Noach?
Yeah.
Not so simple. Where did Noach live? Also not so simple. Where did Noach live? I don't know.
In his boat.
Well, for a while, yeah, but...
It landed somewhere.
Well, landed in Mount Ararat, which I know where it is today, so it's not Israel.
Turkey.
It's Turkey, isn't it?
It's Turkey.
Yeah, Turkey. Wow.
But I don't know if he lived there. I mean, he I don't know. Did he make it to Israel? I'm not sure. It could be it's written, I just don't remember. Okay.
Actually, the vineyards, yeah?
Well, where did he plant vineyards? In Turkey or I don't know.
But Abraham wasn't in Eretz Yisrael, so they said
Till later, till he was 75, yeah.
he was in Haran, right?
Yeah, although that's a whole other discussion, because it could be that Avram went to his visit Israel in the middle also and he came back. Anyway, but we'll leave that for now. Okay. Now another thing that the Ben Ish Chai also points out, he says, because the repetition of the word Noach has to do also with Shabbos. You know that in Kabbalah, Noach is associated with Shabbos. Why? Because Shabbos is menucha, rest, which is the word of Noach. And there's something the Zohar calls Naichel Le'elov and Naichel Le'tata, the higher level of rest and the lower level of rest. Every Shabbos has two levels. There's a deeper level of rest and a lower level of rest, and that's the two things Noach. But the Ben Ish Chai says that also has to do with physical tranquility and spiritual tranquility, right? And he says, what's the secret to meriting both? What's the secret for a person to achieve or to be rewarded with both the inner peace of spirituality, but at the same time to enjoy physical inner peace and to physical sort of tranquility? He says it's consistency. And he says the secret is what Noach was. He says three things about Noach. Tzaddik, right? He was a tzaddik. Tomim, he was perfect. But Doroisav, with his generation. So he explains like this. He says, tzaddik means a person who's righteous. Okay, right? Person who's righteous right from the beginning. He exercised self-control. He's righteous not only in his old age, but righteous in his youth. He's a self-controlled, righteous person. But that's not good enough.
Maybe he had dementia.
Sorry?
No, I was just thinking it was his behaviour at the end was not
With the vineyard? No, that wasn't. That was just a mistake he made.
mistake.
Yeah. Then Tomim. Tomim means consistent. Tomim means perfect. That's the literal word for Tomim is perfect, but also means consistent. What does he say? He says like this. When we're at Tzaddik, when we serve Hashem, there's different times we serve Hashem. Sometimes we serve Hashem, for example, by fasting, which just had Yom Kippur. Sometimes we serve Hashem with eating, like Oinek Shabbos, right? We in Yiddishkeit, we have very, very different experiences, and they're all part of serving Hashem. Tomim means a person is so perfect in his avodas Hashem that it makes no difference what he's doing. The focus of serving God is the same. So a real tzaddik means that he feels no different when he fasts or he eats. If Hashem says to eat, he eats. If Hashem says to enjoy the food on Shabbos, that's what he does. If Hashem says to To fast, Yom Kippur, you fast. It's all part of serving Hashem, right? It's a big madrega, by the way. I think most of us wouldn't be able to say that. Like, it's definitely easier to eat gefilte fish on Shabbos than it is to fast Yom Kippur, right? When you fast Yom Kippur, we definitely feel we're serving Hashem, because otherwise we wouldn't do it. Shalom, on Shabbos, we might eat it even if it wasn't part of serving Hashem, right? So that's what he says. Tommy means that a person has to be consistent right the way through. Then he says there's another form of consistency. B'doiroisav. He says a very interesting thing. He says b'doiroisav with his generation, which means misarev imabriyos. A tzaddik cannot be someone who disassociates himself from other people. You can't just be a tzaddik for yourself. You have to be a tzaddik with other people as well. You have to connect with other people. You have to have a relationship with other people. Otherwise, that's not a real tzaddik. A tested tzaddik means that you inspire other people, you connect with other people. Even though Noach would say actually he wasn't so perfect in that, but nevertheless he tried, right? So he says when you have that consistency, you're a tzaddik, but a tzaddik all the way through. A tzaddik consistent in terms of your own spirituality and relationship with other people, then you merit for consistency in your own tranquility of the higher Noach and the lower Noach, the spiritual tranquility and the physical tranquility. Okay. But we also know that the word b'doiroisav, that he was a tzaddik in his generation, makes Rashi tell us a famous chazal that says like this. Rashi says, what does it mean he was a tzaddik in his generation? Says Rashi, yesh dorshim oisei lishvach. There are those that interpret this as a praise for Noach. There are those that interpret this as a criticism for Noach. Right? What does it mean? And Rashi says, some say that's very praiseworthy. He was a tzaddik in his generation, which means even though his generation was so corrupt and so evil and so bad, yet he was still able to be a tzaddik. Could you imagine what kind of tzaddik it would have been in the time of Avraham Avinu, for example, right? Okay. Others say, no, it's actually criticism. Noach, ish tzaddik, was a tzaddik, but a relative tzaddik. He was a tzaddik compared to his generation. If he had been a different generation, he'd be a regular guy. Wouldn't be such a tzaddik. Okay. So the Parsha asks a question, very, very famous question. I'm just going to share with you something very cute I just saw. That if you have an option to interpret something positive or negative, so why would you do both? Why would you choose the negative? So why don't we just stay with the pshat of positive? That that's a praise. It's a compliment to Noach, right? So I don't know if there's some Rabbi from Michoel or something. So he says like this. He says the pasuk is telling us like this: Tzaddik, Noach ish tzaddik. Noach was a tzaddik. What's a sign of a true tzaddik? If someone is a tzaddik, if someone is a leader, and all he gets is compliments, he's not a tzaddik. He has to get both. That's what he says. Right? If he always does everything that pleases everyone, that's not a tzaddik. There's something wrong with him. Right? So that's why he says that Rashi says, Tamim hoye b'doiroisav, he was a tzaddik, a perfect tzaddik in his generation. Some compliment him for that, some criticize him for that. That means he's a real tzaddik. Because if you only get shvach, that's a problem. Okay. Good. Okay. Now, now I'll just skip out one part. I'll go to the main thing. I'll come back to this if we have time. Okay. Now let's have a look at a pasuk that goes like this. Hashem tells Noach how to build a teva, right? So let's have a look at the pasuk again, page 30. Pasuk Yudalid, pasuk 14. Asei lecha tevas atzei goifri, says to Noach, make for yourself a boat, a teva, an ark of gopher wood. Kidnim tases a teva, make it into different compartments. V'chofarta oiso, you shall cover it. Mi bayis u'michutz ba'kofer, outside and inside with sulfur. I think kofer is. It's like a tar of some sort. What do they? How they translate it?
Pitch.
Sorry.
Pitch.
Pitch. What? Yeah, tar. Okay. So
That's what they put on Moshe's table.
So Moshe, they put it only on the outside.
The outside.
Right? Rashi brings that. It wasn't in the inside because it wasn't such turbulent waters, and also that the tzaddik, Moshe Rabbeinu, shouldn't have to smell the smell of tar. But Noach, Hashem said, no, you've got to make it inside and outside because otherwise it just won't withstand the water. Okay. Good. What else did it say? It says, V'zeh ashatasu oisa, this is how you should do it. Shloish moyes amma oirech hatova, you should make the length 300 amas. Chamishim amma rochba, 50 amas width. Shloishim amma kamasa, 30 amas high. Yeah? Tsoyhar ta'aseh la teva. you shall make, this is the part I want to focus on, tsoihar, you should make a tsoihar for the teva. We'll see what that means in a minute. Vel amot chalenim elamayla, also when you build a teva, the roof should slant its way up, shouldn't be straight, and just leave one am on top. In other words, it should be like a boat, in other words, it should slant so the water can run down. Yeah? Pesach ha-teva b'tzilatotim, you should put the door of the teva on the side. Tachtim, shnim, shloshim b'aser, and you should make it 3 compartments. As we know, one compartment, 3 floors, but 1 floor was for the humans, 1 floor was for the animals, and 1 floor was for waste. Yeah, that's how the table was made. Good. And then he said, I'm going to bring them up. Now, what is a tsoihar? It says you should make a tsoihar. Sorry? Is it? How do I translate it? A window, it says, yeah. Okay, that's so simple. So, all of the Farshim seem to understand that tsoihar had something to do with the lighting of the table. Why? It comes from the word soharayim. How do you call the afternoon in Hebrew? Soharayim. Achariyat sarayim. After midday, which is the brightest time of the day, right? So we know that in Hebrew, sohar means brightness. So Hashem says to Noach, tsoihar ta'aseh la-teva. Make a tsoihar for the table. What is this tsoihar? So Rashi says, I should have copied the Rashi, but I didn't. It's in the Rashi if you want to look through it. It's very, very, yeah. So it says, Yesh oimrim chaloim. Some say that tsoihar is a window. Yesh oimrim even toiva, and some say it's a bright stone. A very, very bright stone. That would generate light. Right?
Why wouldn't I just say that?
Sorry?
Why wouldn't I just say that?
Oh.
Cheesy.
Why don't I say what it is, in other words? Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah. Good. It's a very good question. There's lots of questions. That's what Rashi says. Okay. Now, there are a number of questions. First of all, the word tsoihar is singular, right? It doesn't say tsoharois or tsoharayim. It says tsohar. 1, right? So what does this mean? Like, either if it's a window or a stone, how's that going to be sufficient for light on the table? Table was very big, right? It was 300 amas. That's 150 meters long, 25 meters wide. How's one little window going to create light? Right? Particularly that it wasn't only 1 floor. It was 3 floors. So what's the purpose of the tsoihar? Right? Now Rashi always comes to explain simple pshat, correct? There's a much better simple pshat, one would imagine. And that's the pshat of the Cheskuni. The Cheskuni says, tsoihar comes from the word oil, yitzhar. In the Torah, tirosh is wine, yitzhar is oil. Hashem says, take oil with you in the teva because you're going to have to light lamps. That makes sense. Tsoihar ta'aseh la-teva, take oil in order to produce light, and then wherever you go, you'll take a light, you'll take a thing with you, you'll walk around with it, you'll light candles in the various compartments, and it'll be light on the table, right? Or what? Another question. Why? And Rashi doesn't bring this pshat. Right? Another question, first of all, on the window option. Rashi brings later on in the Parsha that after the Mabul, Hashem reinstituted the cycle of the planets. Rashi says there that what happened was during the flood, the orbits of the planets ceased to work. The whole world went into lockdown. There was no night, there was no day. And the implication of Rashi over there is there was just total darkness. If there was total darkness, what's the window going to help? Right? So some of Rashi want to say, well, that darkness, that what Rashi says the planets didn't work, that's only the first 40 days, when the bubble was actually coming down. Afterwards it did, fine. But Rashi doesn't say that. Or some say, well, the planets didn't work, but there was still some light. But it's not clear, it still seems to be a difficult pshat, right? Second of all, we have to understand, if Rashi brings 2 pirushim, then why What's wrong with either one? In other words, why doesn't he want the one of the Cheskuni? And also, why does he bring these two? Normally Rashi brings two because there's an advantage in each one, right? Okay, so now like this. So the Rebbe once addressed this in one of his Rashi talks, and he said the following. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Noach to build a teva, are all the details explicit in the Chumash? No? Right? Why? We know this from other things. Because there are things that are written there. For example, you have to make a door. It doesn't say that. I mean, it was an obvious thing because you have a table, you have to make a door. How are you getting in and out? You have the door, right? It says an opening, but it doesn't say to construct a door, right? But obviously it was out the door, right? You also, later on in the Chumash, when the Mabul stops, actually Noach doesn't eventually open the door to see if the Mabul stops. What does he do? It says, "Vayosaris michsei hateva." He removes the cover of the table. Where does it say to make a cover? And you have to understand like this: the table was a combination of a miraculous salvation and some sort of natural process, right? But it actually wasn't only natural; it was completely supernatural. I mean, to get all the, it's a big place, table, but it's not big enough for all animals. That's clear. It says in the Parsha like that, right? I mean, you do the maths, right? There's no way all animals can fit in a space like that, right? Especially every animal came double, and the kosher ones came 7, right? 14. So 14, 7 male, 7 female, right? There's no place for that. So it's a famous question, why to build a teva? If it's going to be miraculous, Hashem could have just put him in a suitcase and saved him, right? Okay, so obviously the whole thing was natural. So therefore, but nevertheless, Hashem says, I want you to make a boat, and this is the process you need to take, and it's going to be a boat that is going to float, and you're going to be saved, right? So, but the blow, but it could have supernatural aspects to it, which it did. So the size and all that obviously has to be specific. Hashem is telling him exactly what size, because he doesn't know. I mean, if Noach would start doing the engineering maths on his own, and start working out how much place he needs for all animals, the table would be much bigger. It's never going to happen. Hashem said, no, you've got to make it like this. I want also you and the animals to live on a different floor. Okay, that's specifics. You need to make compartments. That's specifics Noach wouldn't have known. But things that Noach could work out on his own, Hashem didn't specifically tell him, like to make a cover for the boat. Okay, that's normal. Right? So therefore the Rebbe learns that not everything was told to Noach. And therefore the most obvious thing that wouldn't have been told to Noach, wouldn't have to be necessary to tell to Noach, was bringing lighting. Noach would have figured that out himself. And he did figure it out himself. Which is why Rashi does not learn the pshat of the cheskuni. Obviously he took oil onto the table. Obviously he was going to take candles on the table. That's a given. So why do we have this pasuk? Why is Hashem telling him tzoya tasa lateva? Right? So Rashi learns because for some reason, in addition to the oil that he brought, in addition to the lighting that he was already going to have, just to provide light, Hashem wanted an extra source of light to enhance the light, to whatever the reason is. Hashem wanted an extra source of light. Hashem is telling him that I know you're obviously going to take in lighting, that's a given, right? But in addition to the lighting you're going to take in, I want you also to take in a special lighting source, a tzoyhar. Says Rashi, what's a tzoyhar? So Rashi says there's 2 perushim. There's 2. It can be a window or it can be an even toiva. What's the advantage of each one? So the window you could understand because the window has an advantage. The window also will allow you to understand why Hashem specifically told him to make a window, even though he brought in candles. Because the window was going to have other usages. Later on, when he sends the raven and he sends the dove to know where did he send them? Through the window, right? By the way, a window in biblical Hebrew or even in Gemara does not mean like a window we have today. They didn't have glass in those days. A window meant a hole in the wall. Right?
Talk about a skylight in saying this commentary.
But it wasn't much a skylight. Yes, the window could have been in the top, but it wasn't. Didn't have glass necessarily. It was a hole, and then that became also had another usage. On the other hand, the interpretation of stone has also a different advantage to it. You see, there's another problem if you don't learn like this. If we learn that the tzorah was the only source of light, there's another problem in Rashi's interpretation. Some of the Mepharshim raise it: which stone gives off light? No stone gives off light. What? Oh, there are some stones, if there's another source of light, that will reflect it brighter. Right? So therefore, Hashem is telling him, you bring in light. Anyway, you bring in oil. Take a tzorah, take a precious stone, which will enhance the light, because it'll absorb the light from the candles, and it'll give it more light. Why is that better than a window? So the Mepharshim point out, because a stone is something you can carry around with you. So the Rebbe learns that what happened was, Hashem told Noach, take a stone. You have lights all over the place from your candles. But then when you walk around, you feed the animals, take the stone with you. The window is in one place. But the stone is something you can take around with you that then will enhance the light. Because wherever you go, the light that you have ready from the candles will reflect onto the stone and it will give more light. Right? On the other hand, it doesn't fit so much with the word tzar, so there's advantage in both. That's what Rashi brings. So in summary, Rashi does not bring the candles because that's a given. Obviously he took candles. Hashem didn't have told him that part. The tzorah is obviously an additional source of light. Two interpretations: either it's a window, which the advantage of that is it can have other usages as well, or interpretation is a stone, because it can be from the light of the actual something you can take around with you. Each one has an advantage. Rashi brings both pirush. However, we know that with Rashi is not only the pshat, with Rashi there's always another philosophical depth to it as well. What is that? So like this. What is the difference between a window and a stone in terms of the source of light? Right? A window brings light from the outside. A stone, the light is from the inside. The teva, and this becomes a lesson on how we serve Hashem. The teva, one of the ways to explain the teva is a model of the world. Okay? Animals, people, and so on and so forth. What is our mission in the world? The world is a place that is dark. It's a place that doesn't have light. It's a place where Hashem created and hid himself. It's a place of darkness. And obviously our mission and our goal living in the world is to bring light into the table. Correct? How do you bring light to the table? So he explains there's two steps. One step is a window, which is the first pshat Rashi says, and the other step is a stone. Window means that initially you cannot discover dark light in darkness because it's dark. So how do you have to brighten it up? You have to bring light from somewhere else. In other words, initially the way to brighten up the world is to transcend the world. Is to draw from Torah mitzvahs, to bring in kedusha, to bring in holiness from something which is above the world, that is not dark, and bring it into the world. It's almost to negate the world in a way, to negate the darkness of the world. Right? That's step one. Because step one, when you're living and you're part of a dark experience, the way you can bring in light is chalon, you need a window. You need to import light from something else. You need to import ruchnius, you need to import spirituality from somewhere else. That's only step one. Once you do that, then you can go deeper. You can then go to start generating light from precious stone. You can then discover that actually the darkness of the world is only superficial. There's actually light within the world. So you can discover the light within the world itself. You don't have to import light from somewhere else. Right? But that's the formula we always talk about. Like when we start a day, the first part of the day has to be escape the world. Daven, learn, escape the world. Because you've got to tap into something which is outside of the world. That's the chaloin, that's the window. You've got to import light from somewhere else. Otherwise you'll just be stuck in the darkness. But once you're now experiencing light and you understand what light looks like, and you're in that mode of trying to reveal light, then you can leave the davening, the learning, and go into the world, as the Gemara says, and you can discover Hashem in the world. You can discover the light from within the world itself, revealing that Hashem's world is really not dark. The darkness is just a superficial thing. Really there's light in the world, and that's the Even Tova, that's the precious stone, which is within the world itself. Those are the two ones light, and that's the depth within this Rashi of Yesh Oimrim Chaloin. Some people say that Tzoyer is a window, some people say it's Even Tova. That's just the two ways of bringing light into existence. That's the deeper side of what Rashi is teaching us. Okay, we'll stop there.